Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Congressman Sessions.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And I want to thank our witness for being here and the conversation that she's having with the committee. Could you please tell me about your visits to the border?
Congressman, I've made one visit to the border. As the director of ORR, my primary responsibility is to the children that are in our care.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. When was that one visit?
It was I started in September. I believe it was October or November.
So you started in September of 2022. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So since September of 2022, you visited the border one time. Where did you visit?
I visited El Paso, and I may add that the border is DHS is.
That's not my question. I'm not trying to expect anything other than the questions that I'm asking you. What did you see when you were there? What was the purpose of your visit?
I wanted to understand the full process that the children that come into our care go through, and I wanted to see firsthand that part of the process.
What were your evaluations of that?
That these children experience an incredible amount of trauma in their journey to the U.S., and it is frightening and scary to be processed and not understand what may be happening to you.
Okay. So these are children, and many times they're with people that may or may not be their actual parents. We've heard stories. I've been to the border 7 or 8 times and heard the stories directly from people who are federal agents and others who've said it is very routine that a person was put with an older person, and then they found out that that was not even their family. They were simply children that came along. I've heard you say today about the extreme conditions that people went through to come illegally to the United States of America. At any point, have you expressed to this administration that the task that you were faced with, the important task of dealing with children, that perhaps what these children are going through, which will be lifelong images of not only disparity, but of disrespect and harm to their lives, was encouraged, aided, and abetted by a policy that the President of the United States and the Democratic Party is encouraging? Have you ever expressed that or thought those ideas?
Congressman, respectfully, my focus has been on the job I was hired to do.
So, in other words, you have no authority or responsibility to report, hey, Mr. Secretary Mayorkas, we are creating a circumstance here that is harmful and destructive to people's future. We've already heard a member of this committee suggest that they should come here and not be able to get jobs, not be able to work. I'm blaming corporations for that. Well, it's hard for me to understand how this administration continues to encourage not only violations of the law, but bring people, millions of people here, and thrust them to the streets. And then we wonder why we have drug epidemics and why we have crime rampant in our country. Just bring them here, let them just sit on the side of the road. This is an embarrassment, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of most people where I represent in Texas, that we are encouraging this behavior. We are encouraging this not only violation of the law, but against the dignity of men and women by encouraging this inducement of this process. So it's my hope that next time when you leave here, that you may go back and say, you know, maybe we're encouraging bad and not just illegal behavior, but things that will harm people's future. I want to thank you for taking time to be here today. I hope you'll consider some of the feedback that this subcommittee offers to you, and I want to thank you for your service. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks much. Mr. LaTurner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. Since President Biden has been in office, there have been over 4.8 million migrant encounters at the southwest border, not including the roughly 1.3 million gotaways who evaded law enforcement completely and entered our country undetected. This unprecedented national security and humanitarian crisis has overwhelmed federal officials and endangered the well-being of unaccompanied migrant children as a result. According to data published by the Office of Refugee Resettlement since March of 2021, HHS has averaged approximately 11,000 children in its care per month. In 2015, the annual total of children released into the custody of sponsors in this country was 27,000. In 2022, that number was approximately 127,000. That's nearly a five-fold annual increase over that time frame. Congress has been attempting to conduct proper oversight of the Office of Refugee Resettlement for years. Yet agency decision makers have willfully obstructed our constitutional mandate, as detailed by a 2021 Senate Finance Committee report. ORR's behavior has drawn bipartisan condemnation, but it's not just the run-of-the-mill bureaucratic obstruction which I find most concerning. It's that agency decision makers seem determined to undermine ORR's primary directive of safely relocating at-risk children. Secretary Becerra has urged HHS employees to process UACs out of this program at assembly line speed, resulting in an at-risk children being released to sponsors without proper vetting, exploited for illegal child labor, and put at risk for human trafficking. Furthermore, recent reporting issued by a grand jury in Florida alleges ORR actively discourages case managers and background checkers from questioning internal processes, instead encouraging them to prioritize the processing speed of unaccompanied alien children over performing due diligence in regard to their safety. One federal employee was even told by an ORR attorney to stop questioning agency policy regarding the resettlement of children to potentially unsafe sponsors or guardians, because doing so would cause delays, and that, I quote, "We only get sued for keeping them too long. We don't get sued by traffickers. Are we clear?" End quote. These appalling anecdotes certainly make something clear. The Biden administration's weak border security policies have not only invited the masses of people flowing over our southern border, but incentivized the agencies responsible for processing them to sacrifice the livelihoods of children for the sake of political posturing. But there's a simple solution to begin humanely addressing the record high backlog of resettlement cases: securing our border. Director Marcos, operating under the assumption that many unaccompanied alien children either don't possess an ID or intentionally discard their ID as they approach our southern border, is there a process in place for ORR to verify their age?
Thank you, Congressman. DHS does the initial assessment of the children and provides biographical information. They fingerprint anyone over 14 years of age. So we receive this information on the child when they come into our care.
Has there been an instance in which the age verification process has proven someone claiming to be a minor is actually an adult?
That has happened, and when it happens, ORR has very strict policies and procedures in place. Anyone who would be suspected of an adult who came into the program would be isolated, would not be around children, and we would go through steps to verify the age of that individual.
In the event ORR receives intelligence that an unaccompanied alien child is potentially being victimized or abused by their sponsor, what agency protocols are in place to alleviate the situation?
A report is done immediately. We refer to local law enforcement, Child Protective Service, and other federal entities if and as appropriate.
Approximately 66% of UACs work full-time jobs, as reported by the New York Times. The Biden administration only began to take corrective action to rectify the illegal child labor market following the publication of this piece. Was the Biden administration unaware of this labor market vulnerability or unwilling to address it at the risk of drawing further attention to this issue?
Congressman, I can only speak to, since I've joined, I know that our team has been working with DOL on cases, I believe, since 2021. We have just formalized an agreement and really are leaning into increasing policies and procedures to combat this. This is a whole of government approach.
Please hear me when I say this. We want you to be successful, but sadly today you're not. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Looks like that's all we have here. I'd like to ask Mr. Garcia, do you have any closing comments you'd like to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank our witness again for being here today. And I just want to also remind the committee that this is a very broad crisis we're facing. I know that you have a piece of a very serious problem that we're trying to address here in the Congress. And while we're having this conversation, we know that right now House Republican solution is to try to literally just attempt to end immigration and asylum. These are building blocks of our country, particularly for unaccompanied children. This week, they're marking up a bill that would effectively end any sort of support and the work that you were doing and actually take us backwards as it relates to funding for ORR and its critical mission. This bill within the Judiciary Committee that they're marking up requires deportation for unaccompanied children and will drive undocumented children in the U.S. underground to even have less contact with federal agencies, as we know is being discussed today. Children may attempt to completely cut ties and or sponsors with all government agencies, including those designed to support and protect them from unlawful labor practices to avoid the risk of deportation. So as a result, these bills currently in markup, and if they pass, would effectively make children more vulnerable to exploitation. We have a situation in front of us where if we actually want to assist in the work of protecting children, of expanding our follow-up process, ensuring that more children are safe, we should be funding these agencies appropriately. We should uplift the work that you're doing while also ensuring that every children is safe and protected. So thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for coming over. I think I speak for probably all the majority members on the panel. I'm very disappointed of all the answers you were unable to give us. To me, you look overall, we've gone from, in the final year, COVID was half of the final year, having 15,000 unaccompanied minors having to deal with. Within a couple of years, it shot up to 128,000, which the entire year was COVID related. So a lot of these problems stem from just the open borders policy. You can't go from 15,000 kids to 128,000 kids and not think you're going to be able to remotely handle them. I'm very disappointed that you don't know percentage-wise those 128,000 you did DNA testing on. I know the Border Patrol does it occasionally, and it's not unusual for them to find a situation in which they were lying about whether the kid is related or not. You don't know the percent of these kids. You talk to one parent and percent two parents. I'd like to know that. I think it's relevant. A couple of years ago, under the past administration, there was considered nothing worse than having children separated from their parents for a few weeks. Now we have children being separated from their parents for the rest of their lives, and you don't know how many times we haven't even had contact with the parents. There was a very good question here, the sponsor rejection rate. Are any of these sponsors, inadequate? You didn't know what the percentage of that rate is. The fact that we don't know where 85,000 unaccompanied minors are, according to the New York Times, is kind of scary. I realize that's not necessarily your responsibility, but to say 85,000 kids running around this country, we don't know where they are. I mean, that's just unacceptable. You are unable to ask the question, what is being done to prevent whistleblower retaliation and ensure reports are taken seriously. That's something we should know about. And I think we do not have an adequate response as to what we know about other people in these families. I mean, you imply that we found an uncle for this person. There are people who know their uncles like their brother, and there are people who've never met their uncle before in their life. And, sometimes these sponsors are in a household. Maybe the one person we don't have a background check on, or we do have a background check on, but other people we don't. So a lot of people have been asking questions that presumably you'll get back to us within a week or two with the answers. I'm glad we had the hearing. I guess the takeaway of the hearing is if you go with this open doors policy, part of the open door is going to mean we have a lot of unaccompanied minors attached from their parents coming to the country, and not surprisingly, we have no idea where they're winding up, or no idea whether they're safe or not. But in any event, that's it. With that, and without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and submit additional written questions for this witness, which will be forwarded to the witness for her response. If there's no further business without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned. Thank you.